Hello and welcome to the SuperShow podcast. I am your host today, Alex Jones, and joined as always by a man who I'm very grateful knows a lot more about video games than I do, because he's gone through and he's written up some lovely information about the Nintendo Direct, which happened a mere few hours ago at time of recording. I'm, of course, talking about my one and only co-host, Jamie. Hello, Jamie.
Hello, Jonesy. Thank you for having me. And I must admit, I am glad that you have as poor detection skills as my teacher did when it comes to the difference between writing and copying and pasting. Because I promise you that if you, in about an hour's time, turn to me for insight on the new Demper Men, you will be bitterly disappointed.
That's fine. You don't need to know about the new Demper Men. I will say, every time we start the podcast, because I don't prep anything, I always feel like, have you seen Bridget Jones's Diary, where she introduces that guy and she keeps wanting to call him Tits Pervert? And when I feel like when she goes, and introduce you to a man whose name is, I always feel like that, because I never know what I'm going to say. So apologies for my lack of professionalism out there, but hey, we got there in the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Welcome to a podcast all about video games. As I said, today we're going to be talking about the Nintendo Direct, which happened today, because there is not much other news going on. So I'm very grateful that Nintendo gave us some tasty little treats to talk about. We are, of course, going to be touching on the fact that there is a new Zelda game. There is footage of the game Metroid Prime 4. Obviously saw a logo for that a few years ago, but now we've actually got some gameplay to go along with it. And a new Mario and Luigi Brothership, which looks pretty sick. I've never played a Mario and Luigi game. I saw that, I was like, I want to play me one of these. First game in 9 years that Mario and Luigi have had their own little Mario and Luigi game. Poor Luigi gets stitched up, doesn't he? He has Luigi's Mansion, and apart from that, he's just in a Mario game until now.
But then I feel like sometimes it's about just knowing your role when it comes to the wider Nintendo family. Like, on the one hand, yes, it might suck to be Luigi because you're the butt of a lot of jokes, and yes, as you said, you do spend a lot of your time patrolling haunted residences with various suction devices, which is a weird job. But at the same time, I feel like if Luigi, or likewise Luigi's agent, like rocked the boat a little bit and were like, hey, we need to step things up here. It's time for Luigi to hit the prime time. Like Miyamoto and the rest of Nintendo would just laugh Luigi out of the room. He's just doomed to be number 2. Plus, he got his own year, like whenever that was, a decade ago. We weren't podcasting or even YouTubing at the time.
Year of Luigi.
But there was the year of Luigi at one point. I'm going to Google it just to double check when it was.
One of the most damning things about Luigi, of course, is that his name is Luigi Mario. It's Mario and Luigi Mario, which is, I would hate to have my brother's first name as my second name. I'd feel insulted.
But I would also hate to be called Mario. I think they've both got the short straw there. Neither of those are particularly good names. Not for show business, anyway. But then they're basically like Brazilian footballers at this point. Like, you're aware they've probably got other names. You just don't need to say them. It's like it's Ronaldinho and Rivaldo and Mario and Luigi. A bit like we were talking about Pitbull before the podcast started, because me and Jonesy take any opportunity we can to express our love for Mr. Worldwide. But no one knows Pitbull's name. You don't need to know Pitbull's name. He's Pitbull.
I think he was christened Pitbull. I think that is his name.
I think that's his real name. Maybe his full legal name is Pitbull Mr. Worldwide Dale. Mr. spelled Mister.
Anyone who rhymes Kodak with Kodak, and one is not a bear or a place, and one is not, is a film. They're both films in the song. Doesn't deserve a surname as far as I'm concerned. So he is just Pitbull. Shouldn't
That's
be rhyming
punishment.
The same word with the same word. That's terrible. Anyway, back to the games. We are on Twitter and on YouTube. We're at SuperShow Pod. If you want to reach out to us, drop us a little comment, or a like, or just come and say hello. We're also available audio only on major podcasting platforms, talking Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and we are on Paisley Radio at paisleyradio.com. We're on there Thursdays at 10 p.m, repeated on Mondays at 10 p.m. So you can catch us in many different ways. It's exciting. But before we get on to talking about the Nintendo Direct, I think, Jamie, what I'll probably do is ask you what you've been up to in the past week, and get that out the way first. Let's mix it.
Sure, yeah. No, otherwise we're just doing a weird plug for the things we played in the last week at the dying end of this podcast when no one's listening to it
wants
anymore.
To hear it then,
and audience retention is at like 5%. And you want audience retention at its highest possible number when you're going to talk about hit video games such as Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip.
Yes.
And I promise this was not a game that I bought on Steam this past week purely because I liked saying its name out loud. But I do, as it happens, I do like saying its name out loud. Do you want to give it a go?
Yeah, Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip.
Okay, you kind of fucked that up. I'm going to give you one more shot at this.
Okay. Tiny Terry's Turbo Tip. Trip. I did it again.
So, folks, I want to apologize if any of the devs are listening. If anyone from Team Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip, it's like our very own Irish wristwatch.
I think my brain thinks it's a sex game and that he's got a turbo tip, but it's not. It's Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip. I got it that time.
Exactly.
Thank you.
I promise there is little to no fucking to be found wherever Tiny Terry may go. Instead, Tiny Terry is a very enjoyable and quaint. I was going to say little indie game, and I suppose it is little in some respects, but it's quite ambitious in others. Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip is kind of like the indie gamification of the urban open world. So it is kind of like it has elements of sort of like platformers and collectathons, of like the N64 PS1 era. Everyone's got their own favorite, but like brought into that kind of mid-noughties GTA clone kind of vibe that something like The Simpsons Hit and Run was almost tapping into. So you play as the titular Tiny Terry, who and a lot of this is presented through sort of like almost cutscenes with very quirky and funny dialogue. And it comes to pass that really Tiny Terry only has one major goal in his life, and it is to acquire a vehicle and eventually get to the point where that vehicle can go so fast that Tiny Terry can get to space. And he doesn't really care much about anything else, nor does anyone else really around him. Tiny Terry also inhabits a city that doesn't have any laws and doesn't recognize crime. So early on, when you end up getting your hands on, let's just say, almost like a lead pipe and start battering people with it, nothing happens. There's no wanted system, but you can batter people with a lead pipe, and it's completely non-violent. Again, I mentioned The Simpsons Hit and Run. Anyone who remembers that game where you could, should you wish to, kick any random pedestrian on the street, and they would kind of fall backwards and just sort of like roll around, not quite in agony, more in angst than anything else, for a few moments. That's what's going on here. But the real talking point is that, yeah, it's a very small but very charming and surprisingly dense open world. And you jump into Tiny Terry's car, his little turbo car, and you drive around and you spot little things going off on the side that might lead to a little platforming section. You're constantly collecting the resources that you eventually want to use to upgrade Tiny Terry's vehicle, but you end up with other tools as well. I got that lead pipe, like I said, which I can use to whack things, but then I got a spade, which I could use to dig holes and and sort of like find other resources and money that might be buried underground or for whatever reason. And I got a net at one point that I can use to catch bugs, but then I also realized I could use that same net to catch these blueprints for kind of a collectathon mission that one of I guess a quest giver gave me. It's strange to see, like I said, that kind of mid-noughties T for teen GTA clone Simpsons Hit and Run style game given the indie game treatment. But there's also, like I said, a lot of charm. It is funny. I did laugh out loud at some of the dialogue. It's quirky in a way that some people might roll their eyes at, but I kind of bought into the charm. It's just a blast, and I think it's one of those games that if I'm going to, and again, any excuse to say it one more time, if you go and watch a trailer for Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip, you'll immediately get a solid understanding of what this game is going for and any analogs that there might be to games that you might have played in the past. This, for example, Jonesy, I'm not trying to plug it because I know that they don't listen to this, but this is the kind of game that I think your kids, for example, would love. And you're safe because yes, it's like an urban open world game, but like the violence is all for pure comedic effect, and there's absolutely nothing else remotely adult about it. And really, it's just about collecting and laughing at the weird character designs. All the characters are intentionally drawn kind of weird, where their eyes are all over the place and their mouths are off to the side of their face. It's silly and it's fun and it's quirky, but it is also like a really decent little thing to blast through if you need to kill 3 hours, 4 hours on a Steam Deck, especially, which is what I did. So If anyone's
Nice.
looking for like a going away game to take on their Steam Deck this summer, Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip. Keep an eye out for it. I think I paid about £15 on Steam. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Nice. Sounds good. I must admit, I'm a fan of that kind of, as you say, like that takeaway game where you can sort of, if you've got a console you can take and you can play on the go. It's a lot better. It's a lot better than being tied to a desk when you want to really be taking a fun little game of that and wandering around and doing other things
exactly.
on a bus,
No one's
on a
taking
train.
Yeah, you could take an entire desk and a desktop PC on a bus, but you might get some weird looks.
I want to say people did that during COVID, didn't they? There was people who were taking like whole consoles onto trains and playing them. Like I don't know what. Maybe because there wasn't so few people on trains. I don't know why I saw videos of it around that time.
Do you know what? Consoles I can believe as well, because there's that company that makes. Have you seen the almost suitcases that are designed to transport consoles and monitors, but they build the consoles and the monitors into the design of the suitcase.
Oh.
So if you imagine like a briefcase that you open up, and when you open it, you've got like say a 12-inch monitor looking at you and a PS5 kind of on the bottom half.
See.
But it's all kind of built in, and all the cabling's done in nice and discreet ways. They're prohibitively expensive, but you see a lot of footballers show up for like international duty with them because they can't not play FIFA when they're in a hotel in Slovenia.
And they've got a lot of money to spend, so
exactly that they do.
Well, before I mention something that I've been playing, I just want to give a quick shout out to some people in chat that have joined us for the live as they're watching along on YouTube. I'm talking about 69 DJ, Magni, Rodrigo, and Slick1977. Thank you so much for joining us as we record this. And with that having been said, I will move on and briefly mention a game that I've been playing / getting addicted to, which is Car Mechanic Simulator 2021, which I didn't think I would get that addicted to. I've done it before with.
Say the date again.
Car Mechanic Simulator 2021.
Have they not made a Car Mechanic Simulator for the past 3 years, or do you just have a particular affinity for this one? Ah, okay. That's a shame.
No, so okay. What happened? Because what happened was I played Car Mechanic Simulator as it was a free download on the PlayStation, but it wasn't that good an experience on the PlayStation. As you can imagine, it's not that good on a console. It'd be much better to click. And I thought, hey, I wonder how much this game is on Steam. I bet it's really cheap. And then I was playing the 2019 version on the PlayStation, which was the free download, and found there was a newer one, which was apparently much improved and had a lot of positive reviews on Steam. So I took the plunge. I think it was like £9 or £8 or something like that.
Yeah.
But oh my goodness, yeah, it's one of those games where it just ticks the boxes. You take a little order, a car arrives, you have to figure out what's wrong with it. And as someone who knows nothing about mechanics and how cars, I know a little bit obviously about how cars work, but I know nothing about how you'd be a mechanic. I can probably change brake pads. That's about the extent of what I can do to a car. But not anymore, Jamie. Now I can do many, many things. So there you go.
Do you feel like you're actually learning like practical skills that you could apply to a real car without setting yourself or members of your family ablaze?
No, like absolutely not, in no way, shape, or form, because it's massively simplified, as you would imagine. But I tell you what, it does probably do is give you a good grounding in knowing how things, the basic functionality of them. So, for example, like. Games like this, obviously, if you want to change brake fluid or coolant, or if you want to change brake pads or a tire, it gives you, for example, I've got calipers and brake pads and brake discs, whereas people may not even know that. And you can actually look. You can get in the engine and you can see the basic workings of an engine, but they're all the same. Like they're all the same. They all have the same parts. Effectively, like, there's a few variations, but not really. Whereas in the real world, there'll be a part on a car which will be completely different from a part on another car, as in you couldn't swap the two over, but they do the same thing. So they're both like this part for that car. But in this game, the part, a lot of them are more general. So one part will work across multiple cars that in real life just wouldn't happen, I guess.
Okay.
But it's
so for the sake of like making it more like playable, I guess.
Yeah, it would be crazy if they actually made everything accurate to. I think so. There is DLC, and there are a number of vehicles in it which are recognizable vehicles. So maybe once I've opened the game up a bit more and I've played around with some of those, maybe that will be more of a thing. But at the moment, it's No, but it's limited in a good way. Like, I don't want there to be too much. Like, shopping for new parts is already a pain because there's already hundreds of parts. I don't want there to be tens of thousands and you've got to find a specific serial number for a specific spark plug. Like, that would be a real pain in the ass. Like, I don't want that.
I'm looking at the DLC now, and you're absolutely right. Like Nissan, Jaguar, Land Rover, Pagani, Porsche, Hot Rod, Lotus, Mazda, Aston Martin, Mercedes-Benz, like the list goes on. There's even just one called Rims DLC, which I'd like the sound of. Remove the S, and we're really talking.
The company, I can't remember who make it, but the company who make a motorbike version, which I really wanted to get, but I read the reviews and apparently it's crap, so I didn't go that route.
I'm seeing Red Dot Games here.
I can't remember who it is. Maybe it's Red Dot Games. Oh, that's bad, isn't it? Don't remember at all.
Red Dot Games and published by Playway SA, who are also one of the publishers of House Flipper 2.
Okay, makes sense.
One of the reasons I can't give you a hard time about this for as much as I'd like to, because between house flipping and power washing, I feel like everyone's got their weird little simulator niche. It's just a question of whether or not they found it yet.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, even though you wouldn't be able to go and like fix something real wrong with your car. And I'll tell you what you could probably do. You could probably have more of an idea about what may be wrong with your car if it had a problem. Because, you might say, oh, there's this is going on with my car. And like I'll give you a real quick story. I'm that bad with cars that one of my first cars that I ever had, the steering wheel would stick and got to the point where I had to like really twist the wheel. So I'd be driving along and it would just kind of go stick, and then to keep it turning, I'd have to proper twist, and then it would be free again, and then I'd drive along, and then it would get a bit stuck again. I'd twist, and then it would work again. I took it for an MOT because it was due, and the guy doing the MOT, he said 5 minutes into the MOT, it got stuck. He did that, and the steering wheel came off in his hand, and the steering bolt had sheared off.
Jesus!
So I was one journey away from
that
happening mid-drive. I was a lot younger at the time, so I'm gonna, I'll say that.
Yeah, but it doesn't even bear thinking about. We wouldn't have this podcast, Jonesy. You could have gone head on into oncoming traffic for all we know.
Absolutely, could have done. Yeah, it would have. I mean, I tried to think what would have happened if that had happened while I was driving.
Well,
I mean, I would have just planted my feet on the brakes.
Your brakes were working, right? So, like, I guess I had it in my head, like, in that scene in a movie or a TV show where someone realizes their brakes have been cut or just aren't functioning, and they're slamming their foot down and they can't stop. And just at that point, two men holding a large plane of glass, one on each side, start crossing the road, and you go, I know exactly what's happening next.
I like to think what would have happened is I would have done it would have come off in my hands, I would have lifted it above my head, looked at my passenger and just screamed, and then they would have looked at me and screamed.
Oh yeah.
And then
that's like in Planes, Trains and Automobiles, where they're looking back and forth at each other and screaming, and I think John Candy momentarily turns into the devil.
Right. I mean, I have another car horror was my dad had a go at me because my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, she had this crap old car, and she was driving it, and she had to get a new tire, and she took it in to get a new tire. I think she was having a problem with her tires, or whatever, and she was like, "Oh, I need a new tire. And my dad, who's pretty handy, had a look to see, does she, like, how low is her tread? And he said it wasn't even like she had low tread. The tread was completely gone, and the rubber had worn so low that the wires from the inside of the tire in its construction had started to come through the rubber. And my dad was really angry at me that I hadn't noticed that of my girlfriend's car. And I was like, well, it's not my car. And he was like, your bloody girlfriend's driving it. You should have checked it. And I was like, oh, I probably should have done. Yeah,
that's poor form.
I did go in a lot of trouble for that.
Deservedly so, I'm afraid. That's just your dad being a man's man.
Indeed. But you know what isn't on poor form, Jamie? Depending on who you talk to, the Big N, because Nintendo treated us to a tasty little direct, which we only just found out about quite recently. We didn't know about it a little while ago, and now we do, and now we've seen it, and it was good. Depending on who you talk to, I was a little bit disparaging about it, maybe.
Yeah,
Only a
but then,
little
but
bit.
not for ill reason. Like you've got your, you can back up your arguments.
I can, but we'll get into it as we talk about it. So let's jump right in. Let's talk about the games that we saw. As usual, we'll list off sort of most of the games, but we might not delve into all of them in a lot of detail because some of them we just don't really care about. But some of them we will talk about because they're more exciting. And one of the ones that was first up, which was quite exciting. And like I said before, we mentioned it briefly, mainly because I've never played one of these games before, and I think I have space in my life where I could enjoy this, was Mario and Luigi, because they're coming back as a duo in Mario and Luigi Brothership. Well, to be fair, not that they're ever apart, but specifically a Mario and Luigi game, Brothership, which is the first in almost 10 years, which is coming to Switch on November 7th. And a charming little game.
Absolutely. Like it's weird. The Mario and Luigi series actually has a really good reputation relative to how often we get new ones and how well received the previous entries in the series have been. It's one of those series that you mentioned we haven't had a new mainline entry for I think 9 years now, and it's because they have been doing the classic Nintendo thing, some of which we're going to talk about later on in the coverage of this direct, which is remastering and porting older versions of the game. It's almost like it was one of those series that Nintendo have a lot of nowadays where they're constantly testing the waters and putting out remasters and sort of repackages of older titles just to see like, hey, where's the audience for this at? And I don't know if like one line crossed another one and they said now it's time. But I'm excited that it's happening. I think in particular, like I've heard really encouraging things in the past about Bowser's Inside Story, which came out in 2009. That's the one you hear about a lot, and in particular, I think what intrigues me is that this is a series that has historically got actually a lot of positive buzz for its writing and its narrative chops and how it's sometimes shone a light on certain characters. In that case, Bowser, that kind of taking like what a very sort of like two-dimensional black and white characters. Like Bowser is just the archetypal villain of the Mushroom Kingdom, and there's not a huge amount more to him. These are the games that try to offer a little bit more insight into these characters, often in quite humorous ways. Again, from what I understand, and so there's a part of me that does feel ready to kind of like take my first plunge into the Mario and Luigi world. And see what it's all about. I hope it's a good one. I hope it's not like Paper Mario, where like it's a series that's kept going in spite of the fact that a lot of the more recent entries haven't actually been like that great, and that's why that Thousand Year Door remaster was such a big deal because people were like, we just want a normal one of these. Stop trying to make these weird things that no one cares. Stop trying to make us paint everything.
See, that's weird because I was literally about to say that I'm kind of of the opposite opinion because mainline Mario games are few and far between, obviously, but they are very good usually, and when they come out, it's really exciting. And I do kind of skate over the other Mario-esque entries into whatever category they come in, or if it's a Luigi Mansion game, or whether it's a Paper Mario game. But at the same time, like, when I actually do spend some time and get into them, I do find that I enjoy them a lot more than I think I would. I can't remember the name of it. The recent one with was it Mario Wonder, which was very good.
Well, that was an entry in the 2D kind of Mario.
I mean the world in general, like the Mario world in general. Often, I don't think of them all as being, because they're not mainline Mario title games. They're not fitting the same thing. But actually,
sure.
I think there's a lot going on in a lot of them. But I do feel like I should play more of them, and don't maybe play as many as I should.
I'm the same way. It usually depends on like a mixture between sort of like what the reception is like, but also just what fundamentally whether or not I think I would gel with that kind of game. Like I know, what was it? Was it earlier this year or was it last year that they got that puzzle game that was it just Mario and Donkey Kong, or Mario versus Donkey Kong?
But yeah, remake, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Like I looked at that in whichever direct that was announced, and obviously that was I think a remake of a Game Boy Advance game. So visuals aside, you kind of temper expectations a little bit for how ambitious it might be from a design perspective. But I looked at that and I was like, that's not for me. I'm glad what we're talking about in the case of Mario and Luigi Brothership is a new, fully fledged entry in a long running series that is going to be designed with kind of like modern sensibilities in mind. But you're right, like you go further afield in the kind of the wider Mario universe, and there's a lot of critically acclaimed out games out, like Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker. Like I never played that, but I think there were some Captain Toad themed games in the Super Mario like 3D World remake or remaster. Again, there's so many so much repackaging going on at Nintendo, you lose track. I thought that was fun. So I'm definitely keen to see how this lands in November. And that's the other cool thing about it, Jonesy, because I don't know if you've been keeping track. Not a lot of video games coming out in the month of November.
No, but there are now, thanks to Nintendo.
There are a few more.
Yeah, they've certainly got some coming. I'll quickly answer a question that I've got from 69DJ in the chat, who said, "Did you watch this with your kids? Are they old enough to care about Nintendo yet?" Do you know what? I did, because I started watching it in another room, but I put it on the telly, and then they heard it, and they both came running in, because they were like, "Oh, games!" And then we sat and watched the whole 45 minutes together. And bizarrely, as I was telling to Jamie, they were most excited about Farm Magia, which we'll talk about a bit later on. Not at any length, probably, but we'll mention it. Next up for
get them on, put them in the hot seat.
Yeah, they can
hear it from the horse's mouth.
Absolutely. Next up, we heard about Nintendo World Championships NES Edition, which is all about speedrunning NES Edition versions of Mario games and other games. Oh no, it was just Mario, wasn't it? Like that I saw when I watched.
Well, I think this is like the Nintendo World Championships is just a thing. Like I think this is a repackaged.
Because they did this before, didn't they? With the anniversary, where you could play a whole bunch of different like Mario stuff, and you could do verses online and all that sort of thing, which I did do a little bit of. Which was the SNES?
Right.
Was that SNES? No, was that SNES? I can't remember. I don't remember.
I'm not really 100% sure what you're talking about right now.
So they had a bunch of old NES or SNES top Mario games that you could play versus other people, and it was like for 100 days. It was for their anniversary or something.
Oh, you're talking about like when they did like, what was it called, like Mario 99 or something? Because it was like in the same vein as Tetris 99,
right?
And it was
that sounds right.
I don't remember what the actual numbers. It was Mario 35,
right?
Super Mario Brothers 35. Well, it was almost like a battle royale game in a sense, right? It was like, who can survive till the bitter end?
Yes, and Nintendo World Championships NES Edition has elements of that in it, where you're challenging other people, you're doing head to heads, or you're also you can you're doing speedrunning challenges. But basically, it looks like a lot of fun and a good way to repackage old NES content, but look pretty interesting.
Right, exactly. Like if you, for example, already had an emulator up and running on a certain device that you yourself manufactured, and people who subscribe to a certain service could already play, for example, the original Super Mario Brothers trilogy and Donkey Kong and Ice Climbers and Metroid and the first couple of Zelda games and all that things, and you were able to release a software product that was able to bring all of those pieces of software together, but repackage them in such a way where people were playing small portions of them under competitive circumstances, you could theoretically make some money out of that. But I don't know who would do that. Like, it's just a weird idea. I don't know.
Well, it's coming on July 18th, so you don't even have to wait that long. Next up, we had America's Fairy Tale 2, which is a take on the anime Fairy Tale, which is coming this winter. Don't really have much to say about that, personally.
Me neither.
Then we had Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi. I nearly completely butchered that. We've got Fantasian Neo Dimension, which is a turn-based role-playing game where you take turns to try and destroy your opponents in turn-based fun. Which is also, you have the option in this, rather than fight an enemy, you can send them to another dimension to fight them later, which I thought was quite an interesting concept. And you can also bend your moves, Jamie, to attack multiple enemies at the same time. Sure.
Yes, all sounds cool. I just didn't think that it looked particularly impressive in showing. And like, I think it's important to note, like when we're looking at Fantasian, the reason I don't want to be too harsh on it or on Mr. Sakaguchi himself is that it was originally for iOS, and I guess in theory as well, you could play it on like the Apple TV or whatever, tvOS. But it was an Apple Arcade game that is now essentially being ported over to the Switch and other platforms. So again, kind of one of those things of it growing out of the restrictions of the hardware it was previously bound to. So we have to bear that in mind. But that also means for me, as someone who was basically a day one Apple Arcade subscriber who has never played Fantasian, I also have to acknowledge the fact that I'm looking at this and saying, oh, this is a game that I've chosen not to play for free for the past 3 years.
Will I change my mind now?
Yeah, what's the likelihood of me paying to play it now? But Square have stepped in to help publish this, I think, on other platforms now that it's moving off of Apple's ecosystem. I think it's neat that Sakaguchi and Square still have some kind of a relationship, and hopefully bodes well for other new exciting things from him in the future. Because, well, he's not like a household name in many respects. To be the guy who created Final Fantasy, like it's a big deal. That should come with some, you should be recognized for that. That should come with some prestige.
You should, and I think, like you said, the fact that it was a game that was originally built for iOS gives it, it was obviously made to, as you've said, to be on that system. So now that it's now on the Switch, it might look a little bit wonky, but that's because of where it came from, where it was born.
Exactly.
Next up, we had basketball is coming to Nintendo Switch Sports, which actually I didn't know it wasn't there. I've not played Nintendo Switch Sports, although I do have it. But basketball with those little motion controllers did look like a lot of fun. And if it's as good as the motion controllers allow a lot of those games to be, I'm sure a lot of people have time for it. Although, one thing I did notice immediately was I would be putting my hands through my ceiling if I tried to hold my hands up and do a little jump like the woman did in the trailer for it. So, need some high ceilings, or get on your knees, maybe.
Very true. Yeah, you need high ceilings and you need firm floorboards if you're going to interact with a lot of what Switch Sports has to offer. Which I must admit, still something to this day that I've yet to do. I have not played Switch Sports in any capacity. So there's always still a part of me, this is something that you can speak to, that wonders when I'm watching these trailers. It's like, I know that the tracking in the Joy-Cons is solid, but like, is it as good as the Wiimote was, especially when you had like that little knobbly extra bit on the Wiimote that came with, again, one of the repackages of sports back in the day. Like, is the tracking as good?
Do you know what's funny is I would say yes, but weirdly, because you don't have all the setup that you have with the Wii, and it isn't like motion tracking first as the Wii was, I forget that it even does it. Like,
right,
which is a weird thing, because then when we do play something that does use them, you're like, oh yeah, these Wiimotes are solid. Like, they work. Not Wiimotes, the Switch remotes work.
The
Joy-Cons work absolutely fine. But yeah, it's just such a secondary thing these days that I don't really even think about it.
Do you know what I think would improve the Joy-Cons actually and make them even better and almost create a one-to-one relationship between you and your living room and the sport that you were playing on the TV?
Go on.
Is if you got weird, stupid plastic extensions like the fake end of a golf club and a fake tennis racket that you could put on the end of your Joy-Con to really just bring the feeling of being out on the court or out on the field to the living room.
I think you've nailed it, and I would like to see that happen again. So you never know. Okay.
Anyone out there with a 3D printer, if you're listening, there's a huge market out there for fake golf clubs and fake tennis racket extensions for the Joy-Cons.
Or just whittle it out of wood. You don't even need a 3D printer.
That's real old school, actually. That's some woodworking in there. That I feel like that could potentially be a weight problem as well. I feel like holding a Joy-Con with a wooden golf like club extended to the bottom of it. Like the balance might be off slightly, but then that could also help. I don't know. We'd have to see.
I'd like to see someone duct tape a Joy-Con to an actual golf club and then stand in their living room and then just absolutely hammer like a ball, or not a ball, as hard as they could, and maybe just destroy half their room in one go, but see if they get a good hit.
Jonesy, that is such a good idea that I promise you somewhere out there right now is a social media content farm that is emailing every single representative they know for every single pro golfer to get them into the studio to make a how good is a pro golfer at Nintendo Switch Sports golf video. And that will go viral. And then afterwards, they'll get them to eat snacks and say which one's better, which country's better. Hey, South African person, have you had a sausage roll before? Have you heard of Greg's? What? No way.
those things, whenever you see them, there a couple of the things they do are always fine, and then 90% of what they do is such crap. Like no one eats this shit anyway, or it's something so. It really this is ridiculous. It really irks me. It really irks me when they get something, which I like, and then they don't eat it right. So like, for example, I can't even think of an example. Like,
well, I saw one the other day. This might be what you're talking about, where someone nibbled the very top of a cream egg, saw the goo, and decided not to eat it.
Okay, well, then you've not tried it. You've just eaten some chocolate.
Right? Yeah, you've not tried it. Yeah,
That's weird. That is very weird.
but you're not going to sit there and force an A-list celebrity to be like, sorry, you can't leave that chair until you've licked the cream out of the cream egg. And I think that's when their representative says, "Okay, the show's over."
Shove the egg in their face.
That's when Ryan Gosling moves on to the next studio, the next thing on his calendar. For the record, Ryan Gosling wasn't the person who didn't eat the cream.
I want to say, like I saw when it was. It wasn't this, but it was something like they had a pork pie and English mustard. Or they should have had like a slice of pork pie and English mustard, and then because you dip your pork pie in English mustard, but they didn't. They did something, or they had it with something weird, and then they said, "Oh yeah, this is what everyone does," and you just knew the person doing the show had no goddamn idea. They'd never eaten this before either. So just maybe don't do it. Maybe leave that out. I don't
know. It would be, I guess. That's the other thing about shows like that, is it would be kind of like a fun day out and a fun excursion if you were just doing like wall-to-wall like interviews in the traditional sense. But everyone nowadays, every media outlet and every production company is trying to think of so many zany, off-the-wall ways to get celebrities engaged in what's it called? Junkets.
Yeah.
That like I saw a tweet the other day where it was like the amount of chicken every actor has to eat to promote their latest movie is off the charts now. And it's like, yeah, you're not wrong.
I was gonna say, like, I feel sorry for Sean from Hot Ones, who must be years ago it was a wicked concept and it was quite rare, and nowadays I think probably the celeb comes in and goes, "Oh God, not more hot stuff," and he's like, "No, we've been doing this for years." But there you go. Anyway,
the OGs.
Indeed. Next up, Mio Memories in Orbit. Pretty watercolor world. That's all I'm going to say about this game.
It looked pretty. Apparently, it's a Metroidvania, but we don't really know that much more about it.
No. Then we had Disney Illusion Island, which is having a mystery update and is launching on Nintendo Switch on Tuesday, which is today. So that's,
I wonder if there's any update on that. I'll be honest, this game kind of passed me by in its entirety. Like I know it wasn't meant to be bad by any means, but
is this the one where you're walking around and you've got like all the different Disney characters just kicking it in a village and you can be friends with them?
I don't know about the village. No, I think you might be thinking about like Disney Dreamland Valley or whatever it's called.
This is exactly what I'm thinking about, Jamie.
This is the side-scrolling platformer where you play as like the OG like Disney characters like Mickey and Minnie and Donald and Goofy, and it's like the co-op platformer.
I didn't realize this was even out.
It came out last year. Yeah,
I completely. Do you know what? I really wanted to play this, and then I missed it launching. And I'm now finding out from you that it's already out and it's having an update. Do you know what? I think I might know a game and a person who might be about to buy it and play it. So maybe
there you
go. Fill you in.
Unfortunately, because it's like it's on a Nintendo platform, I can confirm that on the eShop at the moment. Is it the eStore or the eShop?
Was it 350 quid?
No, it's 35, but that means it's still full price.
That is not too bad for a Nintendo eShop game.
You could do worse, but I'm not seeing much at the moment, even though it is the day of all days, about the latest. I think it's called Mystery in Monoth, from what I understand, and it was an update that will see Mickey and the gang setting out to help Detective Dash Dolphin solve, you guessed it, a mystery. But other than that, and knowing that it's a free update, I can't say too much more.
When I remember seeing this game, not the update obviously, but the actual game, when I got excited for it in the first place, it was just because I thought, Cuphead, but officially licensed with Mickey.
I mean, you're not wrong. There's definitely some inspiration being taken there. Yeah, that launched July of last year to a 73 on Metacritic.
Okay, so almost exactly a year ago, blimey. Next up, Hello Kitty Island Adventure, which was originally available only on mobile, is coming to Nintendo Switch and PlayStation and Xbox as well. It is a timed exclusive, meaning that Nintendo players will get to play it first. Oh, sorry, we'll get super cute Animal Crossing New Horizons. Oh no,
that's just a comparison. That's just me saying it looked like Animal Crossing New Horizons.
Reading Jamie's notes, so it's a time exclusive. You'll be able to get it first on Nintendo. Hello Kitty Island Adventure. Does it? I don't remember seeing this one even in the direct. Maybe I skipped over it, or maybe I was getting distracted. Looking at something else.
It's probably like a combination of the two, but I reckon what happened was you saw Hello Kitty and your eyes just began to glaze over, and that was pretty much the end of it for you. I
saw Hello Kitty and I immediately started thinking Little Kitty Big City, and then my brain went to a totally different place.
Because then you remembered that the joke we made about what if Little Kitty Big City was about fannies.
Yes,
and then you started going off into one of your I'm right there.
My brain went to a hentai place and it was happy there for a few minutes, and then I completely missed out on this charming little game that's coming to the Switch first.
Oh yeah, it really does. If you watch the trailer, it really does look like Animal Crossing. It is like Hello Kitty adjacent characters. I say adjacent because they're various animals, not all just kitties, wandering around this island and doing farming and like designing their bedrooms and that kind of stuff. Some bits appear to be a little bit more adventurous. There's one thing where they're like going on a minecart near a volcano, but otherwise it looks to be very Animal Crossing-like to my mind.
Next up, though, was something which I must admit I was just thinking that it was... what's the name of the film?
You're thinking of Space Jam.
Yes, I am thinking of Space Jam. It was basically Space Jam, the game, and that just made me want to play it, which is... Maybe that's a cheap shot by a cheap trick by Nintendo and by Looney Tunes, whoever, well, I guess it's Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers own Looney Tunes? I suppose they do.
Yeah.
But yeah, this immediately made me want to play this because Looney Tunes Wacky World of Sports has 4 arcade-style sport minigames, including football and basketball. But it's got a very Looney Tunes spin, so it's got anvils and that sort of stuff. And that's why it looks like Space Jam. But it did look very cool. So, don't know how good the gameplay will be.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, weirdly enough, they did make at least one Space Jam tie-in game with that last film, the LeBron film.
That was terrible,
and
wasn't it?
The film wasn't great, and I would imagine that the tie-in game wasn't particularly great either, because I don't remember hearing much about it at all. And to be honest, I can't remember the last time any of the Looney Tunes characters, other than sort of like, I guess, some tangential involvement in multiverses. I can't remember the last time like Looney Tunes characters headlined a well-received and sort of like widely liked game. So I guess going the slightly more arcadey route and like making more of a throwback game, not quite to the same degree that like some of the Digital Eclipse games have gone lately with like TMNT and that Power Rangers title we saw the other day. But there is still something about like capturing that nostalgia for an era of video games and television, kind of all wrapped up in one. Albeit this with a more modern aesthetic than a lot of the kind of throwback games are going for nowadays.
Yes, but something which is not getting a throwback, which is getting something new, is Among Us. Because there's going to be a free update on Tuesday, which is going to introduce new crewmates and imposter roles to Among Us. So we're talking the likes of a tracker, who you can put a tracker on another player to see where they go about the ship. You've got another character who can is a phantom, and when they kill a player, they can turn invisible, so they can sort of get away with murder. You also have, what was the other one I remembered, and now I can't immediately remember what it was. I can't remember, but there's a couple other roles going. Oh, the sound. There's a sound alert character who can, when they find a dead body, they can have an alert sound so that everyone knows where the dead body was, and they can come rushing to track down that cheeky.
I'm glad you were paying attention.
I think Among Us is a game that I didn't play a lot of. I played a bit of, but I think as we talked about the other day when they launched their Outer Sloth initiative, which was to get more money into people making other games. I've got a lot of love for Inner Sloth, so I'm glad that they're doing some cool stuff with that and sort of keeping it fresh, keeping the IP alive. Next up, Jamie, we had Farmagia, which I only remember in any detail because this is the one that my kids were like, I really want to play this game. Was an interesting little. I'm trying to think. I think it was turn-based game where you were using little animals and creatures from the environment where they could attack en masse. It was utilizing things like weaknesses of certain animals to defeat enemies, sort of Pokemon style. Which was, I think, why my kids were kind of into it. And then you can also have them grouped together to make a big dragon or a big monster, and they were all about it, which is the only reason I remember it.
I'll be honest, like, the fact that this is either the game or one of the games that stood out to your kids is just another scary reminder of how out of touch I am with the youth of today. As if Roblox wasn't enough evidence on its own. Like, Farmagia, with all due respect to the team who are putting this game together, like, this is one of the games that I probably would have forgotten I saw today had you just asked me to recall everything I could remember from this direct.
I forgot it has farming elements as well. I think you farm the animals and then go and use
the name farm is in the game. It reminds me of like the game Harvestella, and you're like, I wonder if there's going to be a harvesting element.
Yes, and there was.
There was.
We've also got a remaster. Donkey Kong Country Returns HD is coming on Jan 16th of next year. So that's not going to come out until 2025. Okay, interesting. Which is a long way for a remaster.
I think this is the latest date they gave anything that had a firm date. Right. There are a couple of things that had a generic 2025 date, both that the Nintendo are publishing and that other studios are publishing. But in terms of things where they're like, this is the date, mark your calendar, this was the latest they went, I'm not going to suggest that that's Nintendo kind of showing their hand a little bit with regards to plans that they might have or not have for future hardware, for example. But the cat is out of the bag at the moment. That's already, like, Nintendo have directly acknowledged a successor or a follow-up to the Switch coming at some point. All signs point to something happening kind of maybe late spring next year. So I wouldn't be surprised if kind of Donkey Kong Country Returns ends up being, one of the last things. And in that sense, it kind of makes sense as like just a thing that kind of like fills the gap. Just one of those games that Nintendo can pull out of the vault, do a very simple, touch up on, and put out there. And like we were saying with Mario and Luigi, I think it's also just another kind of like pulse reader. It's also another thing where it's just to say like, hey, how are people feeling about side-scrolling DK games now? Because like, I don't know, was I'm trying to remember what the last actual one was. I think it was the Wii U one, which itself has already been remade. Tropical. I'm forgetting the name.
This is from the Wii, isn't it? This is
Tropical Freeze.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
But this is the Wii one, yes. But Tropical Freeze, I think, was the last mainline Donkey Kong Country game, which itself got re-released on the Switch as well. And so, again, much like Mario and Luigi, you're talking about a decade now without another new mainline entry. Whether that means they're kind of like testing the waters for something on any future hardware that they do release, who could say? But yeah, we'll see.
Well, they were definitely on a bit of an HD kick, because we then had the Dragon Quest III HD 2D remake that will be coming to Nintendo Switch November 14th, which is going to bring the classic game back. We also found out that we're going to get remakes of Dragon Quest 1 and 2, and they'll be coming in 2025.
Yeah. This, for a little bit of trivia, Jonesy, this was the thing that made me find out for the first time that in terms of like the chronology of the story, Dragon Quest III does actually come first.
So they're doing it in chronological order by releasing them in this order.
Turns out, yes. In terms of the trilogy of games made up by the first three Dragon Quests, Dragon Quest III takes place first. Whether or not that was the plan all along, who could say? But that's the way it's worked out.
We then had a bit of a weird one, because I'm a bit of a fan of Funko Pops, but we've actually got a game that's got some Funko Pops in it, and it didn't look It didn't look all that. I don't want to be too mean.
No.
It was.
Which is a shame because they have so many characters and so many IPs to pull from, right?
It's almost. It could almost be on par with something like Lego at this point. Like they've got so many. Like you said, they've got so much they could touch on, in the same way sort of Lego has. But this was 10 by. How do you say it? 10 games? 10 out of 10. I don't even know what they would call themselves. Anyway,
I'd say the 10-10 or 10 by 10 also
by
has a
10.
nice ring to it, but 10-10 is probably the safer bet.
10. Well, they were showing off Funko Fusion, which is an action-adventure game where you play as Funko characters. And so they're using some of their IP, so, different shows and movies like Jurassic Park, for their cool Funko game. Yeah, didn't look all that. Maybe it's early. Maybe it's an early trailer, but it's not because it's coming out in September. So.
I was going to say, it's definitely not early. I think we're just looking at a cover your ears 10-10 games. I think we're just looking at a bad video game that has been made to take advantage of the various franchises and pieces of intellectual property that they could force in there. And I must say, it was a really unusual mix. Not even the ones that are in there, but the ones that were highlighted or showcased in the trailer itself. Like, I totally understand why Jurassic Park or Back to the Future or something like that would you kind of get more or less front billing. When you're making Battlestar Galactica references in your game that is ostensibly going to be sold to kids who recognize a character on the front of the box art, I'm like, that's a move. But maybe they're just trying to get reach as many hearts and minds as possible. I don't know.
It's a weird one as well because Funko Pops are quite popular among many different groups of people, but at the same
Virgins.
time.
Group number 1, virgins. Group number 2, pedos. Group number. I'm joking.
Okay, yeah, I was waiting to hear my group. I'm not that into them. Do you know what I'll tell you? It's very specific.
I was going to say, if you do that Venn diagram, you're actually kind of saddling between the two.
So, well, I like them for a very specific reason, which is when I really like a piece of media, I think they're quite a cool thing to get to remind you of the thing you like.
I don't know why I find that so funny. I love Jurassic Park so much. The only thing that was missing was something to remind me of how much I like Jurassic Park. And to do so, I needed a big-headed version of one of the characters on my desk at all times. So I can look at the big-headed version of the character from Jurassic Park and say, oh, that's right, I love Jurassic Park. What the fuck are you saying?
Like, I don't know, but there's almost like a thing of... Because you kind of don't want it to be when you enjoy a piece of media, whatever, and you're like, oh, it really sucks. It's over. It really sucks. I'm finished with it. And then you can. So okay, for example, I had BT and Jack from Titanfall 2.
I remember, yeah.
And that's cool. I like that. I like it being there, reminding me that I like Titan. Maybe not like that. That does sound weird. It doesn't have to remind me that I like Titanfall 2. But. I don't know.
I think I agree. It's a bit of fun, and it shouldn't be taken too seriously. And I also think that there's a collectible element when you do create like a range of something that have similar aesthetics. That I'm sure there are people out there who have 500 of them, and they look quite nice on a shelf.
Oh, and 500. Like that's insane. If you've got 500 Funko Pops, you've got too much time and money.
I think if you've got 5, you've got too much time and money, but that's neither here nor there.
All right. I've probably got 15.
The problem is, it's not that... I do think the kind of needing something to remind you of how much you like something reasoning is slightly odd. But even if I put that to one side, generally speaking, I don't have a problem with like action figures and memorabilia or I have T-shirts that have like bands on them or movies on them or games on them. I don't put those T-shirts on in the morning so that every time I see myself in my reflection, I'm like, oh, I remember I like that. It's just like it's a thing, and I'm not here to shit all over the thing. What I am here to say is if you have a deep affection and a deep, profound love for a certain IP or a certain franchise, why would you want to acknowledge that or represent that in the form of these shitty non-bobbling bobbleheads that all look the same?
Some do bobble.
Buy a fucking cool action figure. Don't buy a weird little thing where like someone's going to look at that and say, oh, is that the character from this? And you go, oh no, it's the character from that. Because they all fucking look this. They're all the same weird fucking square-headed weirdos.
Yeah. But there is a weird thing with them that they are, some of them, I can't remember what. So when it comes to, I think it's Marvel, they're not allowed to be like the character. They're not allowed to be the vinyl characters because there's someone else has the license for that. So when it's Marvel, they have to be bobbleheads. So they actually are on springs and their heads do bobble.
Oh, weird! I didn't know that.
Yeah, which because
That's a weird like legal thing.
You probably don't remember this. Maybe you do, but I did a bit of a weird thing. I do some weird
Where's
things.
this going?
I did a bit of a weird thing with the Marvel's Avengers game.
I can't remember where this is going. Tell me.
So when Marvel's Avengers the game came out. Obviously we talked about it a lot. Like played it a fair bit, and was sort of saying how it's gonna die because it's got a terrible like Game Plus whatever. And I was like at my local Smith's Toys, and they had loads of them. They had the Marvel's games Funko Pops, but they're specifically from the games. But they were all dirt cheap because no one was buying them because the game was rubbish. And so I was like, okay, if no one's buying them, that means they're all just going to get binned, burned, or whatever. And at one point in the future, they're going to be quite limited. So I think for like 20 quid, I think I bought like all of the main characters. So it's like 6 of them.
Okay.
From that. So yeah. So for cheap as chips, I got and I still have them. I have them somewhere. I can't remember where they are. They're in a box somewhere.
I thought that you were about to say that you bought multiples of each of them as part of some like long con investment scheme. That would concern me. Buying one of each of them because they were low price and they were all from the exact same video game, and it's a video game that like we had a very up and down sort of relationship with over the course of a number of years. I don't think that's that embarrassing. I just think that if you were going to like share your enthusiasm for a game, a movie, a brand, or you're going to represent that through the purchase of something or having something out on display or whatever it was, there are just infinitely cooler and more interesting ways to do it than through Funko Pops that have like taken
That's true.
like all the fun and meaning out of like collecting shit. I don't know.
I would agree with you.
And pricing's also a problem. Like you mentioned BT. What's the alternative to a Funko? Probably some like £150 collectible action figure that you're not meant to take out of the packaging. And I'm not suggesting that like that's a like for like replacement because the pricing is very, very different. And I know once you get into the action figures world, you're talking about things that are very expensive. I don't know.
You are. Ironically, that Jack and BT Funko Pop, I don't know if it is anymore, but at one point it was worth about 250 quid.
Well, there you go.
Madness.
Because I want to say to represent how like big BT is relative to the pilot. It was like a larger than average Funko, right? It was like a
you could
thing.
and you had a mini Jack, so you could put
and
Jack
he would go
in
inside,
BT.
right?
Yes, exactly.
I mean, that's kind of. I like Titanfall too, so that's cool. Obviously,
can I take
protect the pilot?
Can I take a brief digression at this point?
I think we already have.
Even more of a digression to say that, and I'm probably going to be on my own here. There's a film that's come out on Netflix called Atlas with Jennifer Lopez.
Oh yeah, I got absolutely slated.
Absolutely slated.
It's got Shang-Chi in it.
I don't know who that is.
Shang-Chi and the MCU, Shang-Chi and the something and the 40,000 cock rings.
What was that called?
Simu Liu is the actor's name.
Simu Liu. I remember he went to because I used to watch him.
He presented at the Game Awards last year.
He did, and he's in a TV show set in Canada where his family have a shop. Convenience, I think it's called. Good show.
Kim's Convenience.
Funny show. Yeah, enjoyed it. Very good.
Yes, he's an Atlas.
Yes, he's an Atlas. Okay, so I watched Atlas knowing that it got absolutely panned, but also knowing that it is like a bit like Titanfall in that you have this AI Titan and a pilot, and they have to work working together and like blending their their neuro link. They can be better than they can be individually. And I was so in for it just because it was like a weird Titanfall like adjacent IP, and
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. And the only
Oh,
thing
you
that
really liked it?
I did like it because it was just like watching a Titanfall movie, but then
That's disrespectful. Come on now, be
not
careful.
okay, not as
Don't say
good.
things you can't take back.
That's fair. But there was even I was genuinely waiting and thinking they may have a bit where he says protect the pilot, but he doesn't say
Protect
it.
the pilot.
He doesn't say it, but I
Yeah.
would not have been surprised.
Is there a scene where one of the Titans or one of the mechs or whatever they called them in the film kind of like has to break its own protocol and start making decisions for itself in order to protect its pilot, and like picks up Jennifer Lopez and throws her like 100 feet, and then she starts wall running on this panel to after she's been thrown.
Not that much, but yes,
Damn.
but no, but almost. Because there is I don't want to anyone who hasn't seen it. I don't want to like ruin any of it. But
Oh no! Have perished the thought. Spoilers for Atlas.
does someone might see this and actually want to watch it? It's on Netflix. They've got Netflix. They're like going to watch it. But no, I thought it was a lot better than the critics said. I've watched other stuff that the critics said was good, and I thought that what a pile of trash. As an example, I preferred Atlas to The Creator, which I don't think The Creator did that well either. Actually, saying that, but
You preferred Atlas? I haven't seen the creator, but that I find that very interesting. You preferred Atlas.
I thought The Creator had some really good ideas, but I did not enjoy that. I thought it was boring.
Fair enough. I haven't seen either, so I will decline to comment. But it's not the way around I thought that would go.
I need to watch Rebel Moon Part 2 as well, because the first part of that was terrible, and so I'm looking forward to the second part. Because
I'm waiting for when Zack Snyder promised us like the R-rated edits with all the blood and the gore. That's what I'm waiting for.
Right.
For once, I'm actually waiting for a Zack Snyder cut.
Oh, so okay. We actually got someone on the live who, Real Scorpion 82, coming and say, first time here live. Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Says that Atlas is not trash, not great, or even good, just average. That is very fair, and I would agree with you. It is average, but I think average is fine for some films. You can have an average film that you enjoy, and that doesn't mean it's bad. And then critics will slam it because it's not good necessarily, but it's got enjoyable elements. I thought it was fine, and it has I can't remember. There's a guy in it who I really like, the actor from Predators, the black guy with the beard. Has he got a beard? He's got like a short beard, and he always plays like
Sterling K. Brown.
Yeah, he's very good in anything I've seen. Him in.
When you say Predators, do you mean the Predator?
The Predator, yeah. Which is one of my. A line in, and this is how cheesy I am. There's a line in that I really liked where the kid, who's like 9 or something, he tries to use reverse psychology on the kid, and the kid goes, reverse psychology, don't go fuck yourself. And I thought that was funny.
That's a very Shane Black line.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, this massive digression that we've taken, let's get back on track after talking about Funko Fusion. How we took the longest about the crappiest game at the Nintendo Direct. But anyway, next up was Luigi's Mansion 2, which is getting an HD upgrade when it launches on the Switch later this month, June 27th. That's something actually I might pick up. Like I did enjoy the last Luigi's Mansion. But I'm lost now. This is a remaster of Luigi's Mansion 2. The previous one, Luigi's Mansion, was that a new entry in the Luigi's Mansion series, or was that Luigi's Mansion 1 HD? I cannot remember, Jamie.
When you say the previous one, Luigi's Mansion, what do you mean Luigi's Mansion 3?
On the Switch, we got it for all-time gaming, and
that was 3.
Was that 3? Was it? Okay, I couldn't remember.
Yeah,
I can't remember which one.
3 was the one. Yeah, so 3 came out at the end of 2019, just as we were in what proved to be the sort of final few months of all-time gaming.
Right.
But no, to my knowledge, there have only been 3 proper installments, and this is the only one to have been like. Actually, no, that's not true. I was going to say this is the only one to have been remade or re-released. That's not true. But this is a re-release of the second one, which when it came out was called Dark Moon and was a 3DS game. Right. So that I guess that's one of the reasons. Again, the potential arguments for it being re-released is to kind of get it off the 3DS and that classic thing of Nintendo wanting to have everything exist in perpetuity. The wrinkle in that is that the first ever game, Luigi's Mansion, which obviously famously a GameCube title, that also did get re-released itself, but that was a 3DS game too. Okay. So Luigi's Mansion, GameCube and 3DS, Luigi's Mansion 2, 3DS, and now Switch, Luigi's Mansion 3 just Switch.
Right. That's the only
Hopefully.
the only problem with Nintendo is so many of their stuff are done like that you never have any idea. I never have any idea where I'm at in a series. Like,
I mean,
you know, if it's HD, that it's old.
It does help that I'm not trying to call you out here, but this is literally one of the few where they just number them. All you have to do is remember the numbers.
But I don't remember the numbers, Jamie. You know that I don't like numbers.
Well,
You know that I get all confused with numbers coming out of heads, and so numbers on games confuse me as well.
like they've actually made it even more helpful by renaming Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon to Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. Like they've actually renamed this title to go back to the numbers to make it more consistent with Luigi's Mansion 3 being called Luigi's Mansion 3.
Okay. Oh my god. Can I also? Okay, but there's something we have to touch on here that I've only just realised.
Yeah.
As a fellow editor, you'll be able to elucidate this as well for the audience and tell me why I'm wrong if I am. So they call their remakes of old games that they're remastering HD, right? Because they're like, here's the new version, it's HD. The screen resolution of the Switch is 1280 by 720, which is not HD.
Well, it technically is. It's just not full HD, right?
It's yeah. They called it? I can't remember. They used to call it like almost HD or something. Because obviously 1080p or 1080i, whatever you want to call it, 1080 lines, I would call true HD.
Yeah, true HD, full HD. Yeah.
So 720. So they shouldn't be calling these games HD.
My understanding, which again is a limited understanding, is that 1280 by 720 is still HD, it's still a high definition output.
Higher than 512, sure.
It's in it comes under the remit of what would be considered high definition television.
Oh, right. So it falls in that category. All right. I'll give you that then. I'm gonna
in terms of digital broadcasting standards. Like if you were broadcasting out a 1280 by 720p something in that resolution, it would be HD TV.
Although I've just found someone here on Reddit, and they're always right, who says, why is 720 no longer considered HD? So maybe I'll have to cover read of that.
That might be getting into weird territory, because again, you and I know all these lots of things as well. Like when it comes to sometimes when you're talking about resolutions, you're talking about standards, and some of those standards are informed by different things. Sometimes it's like television and broadcast, and other times it's more offline stuff. But there's also marketing is a huge part of it.
Massive.
And why for example, why we switch from talking about one axis to the other when you're going up through 720p and 1080p or up to 4K. It's we've switched. We don't call it 1280 1920 4K. And then even 4K is a weird thing where a lot of 4K isn't technically 4K because it's 3840 by 2160. So then they had to make an additional resolution called True 4K, where there were actually 4,000 pixels.
Just so they could say it's legit.
But then the aspect ratio gets all weird as well, and so it's all a mess.
I'm sorry, I've taken us down a strange path.
These are fascinating paths to think about, but also weird headaches.
All right. Sorry,
especially
Nintendo.
For anyone that has gone through the process of making and mastering video game trailers that have to be sent off to not just various social media platforms and things like that, but storefronts, and seeing the resolutions that each company works at, and the codecs and things and the packaging that each sort of console manufacturer wants. And one of the nice things about Nintendo is they're not very picky about codecs or anything like that, and they want all their video when things are going to be uploaded to the eStore and the eShop in 1280 by 720, which means when it comes to export times and file transfers, it's easy. Whereas I can't even remember the codecs that the weird codec that PlayStation sometimes want, and the kind of the like the weird 20 gigabyte files you end up being left with, which you think, oh, like one trailer, 20 gigabytes is fine. You're like, no, it's not one trailer, because there's a version with the Peggy logo at the front, and there's a version with the ESRB logo at the front, and there's an unrated version, and there's the Peggy and ESRB pending ones where you're in the process of getting your ratings, but you don't actually know them yet. And then there's the bings and the bongs, and which is the unofficial name for like the weird glyphs that play at the beginning and end. Microsoft need .srt or subtitles files delivered with every single video, even if you don't. And it's so pedantic that even if you deliver Microsoft a trailer that has no dialogue in it whatsoever, you still need to have a .srt file that goes intro glyph, and then square brackets music for 2 minutes, and an outro glyph. You still need to deliver it.
Jesus. Do you know the worst / most fun and good to have done, because it was just fun, was I cut a short bit video for a big screen in New York. It's this giant screen on the side of a building.
Oh, right, like a Times Square kind of vibe.
I think it might have been Times Square.
There you go.
But it actually has windows in the screen. So it's that big that it covers a building, and it's got windows in it. So when you actually have to make the video, you get a template with the windows on to make sure that none of your text or any of your action in the video is hidden behind a window when it's played back, which was like, what? So I was editing, trying to reposition shots because, these windows, and I just love the idea that someone was like opening the window, leaning out, you like yelling and waving or whatever mid video. But anyway, let's get actually. Okay, hold on. Where are we up to? How many got? We've not got too many left. Am I gonna? No, we're going to talk about two more games quickly. The new Denver.
I'm trying to think what the interlude after the next two games is going to be. You've got me on center.
You know, it's not. It's nothing crazy.
Oh, I've remembered.
The new Denver Men looks like a weird version of Animal Crossing with mini games, which is coming to Switch July 27th. So the second game, which looks a bit like Animal Crossing, as we already said, we got on earlier on. And something which piqued my interest, because I am a bit of a fan of the arcade, Metal Slug Attack Reloaded is coming to Nintendo Switch on Tuesday, which is pretty wicked because it's today. So that's exciting. Although this isn't a straight like arcade shooter Metal Slug, is it? Because this was I don't know if you remembered this, but this is like a team-based build your team and battle sort of Metal Slug, which I've not seen it before. But I'm a fan of that aesthetic. I'm a fan of Metal Slug, so I might have to look this one up.
I had the same thing where I was looking at it and I was like, I think I was watching out the corner of my eye at this point because I was like, oh, Metal Slug. I know that Metal Slug Tactics game is I think coming out soon as well. Maybe they're just making another throwback Metal. And then I cast my eye over it, and you're right. I was like, I don't know what the name for this genre is, but I've seen games of that ilk where you're putting together a team that almost take place, fight the opponent like one after the other, and like team battle tactics kind of stuff.
I've seen it on mobile. I've seen it on mobile more,
right?
But maybe not so much on Switch.
There's one that stars animals, like farm animals, that I see getting quite a lot of play on some on like sites like Twitch and stuff like that. But I cannot remember its name. Super Auto Pets.
Oh, okay.
Does that
no, not heard of it. That sounds like a hell of a name for a game, though. Super Auto Pets.
Super Auto Pets, an auto battler, where the player chooses pets with special abilities to fight against other users. So I don't know if it's actually this, a Metal Slug auto battler that we're talking about, but there you go.
Oh, but no, something to look out for. It looks quite cool. Next up was the Gothic roguelike role-playing game Darkest Dungeon 2, which is getting a sequel. It's coming to Nintendo Switch on July 15th. Again, not too long away. So that's pretty cool.
No, I just wish that I wasn't put off by how oppressive the previous Darkest Dungeon game was, and how oppressive this will probably be as well. Like, very difficult and very grim and very dark. Lots of permadeath and sadness.
My 5-year-old said, "Oh, this looks good. I want to play this," and I said, "No." he said,
cool.
"Why not?" I said, "I don't think this is appropriate." Which I've taught my kids that. I've taught my kids that phrase. They literally say to me, they'll be like, because they're both obsessed with Godzilla, and they'll be like, "Can we watch Godzilla -1?" And I'll say no, and they'll look at me and go, "Is it not appropriate?" And I'll be like, "I don't think it's appropriate."
Yeah, there are some themes there that even at best would go over their heads, but at worst might be not appropriate,
Yeah,
not age appropriate.
not age.
You can
That's
worry
not
about
age appropriate.
you can worry about war when you're older, kids.
Exactly. And at this point, I was looking for something else in this little list of stuff I've got, and I think, oh, okay, there we. Yeah, no, I know where I am. At this point, I'm going to take a brief interlude. We've talked about, we've given a shout out to a lot of cool games already, and a lot of cool things. I want to give a shout out to some cool people. These are the people who support us week in, week out, who go over to patreon.com/SuperShow, and they support our channel by giving as little as $2 a month and as much as $50 a month for different levels of bonuses. So the $2 level, we have a Discord server where people go on there and chat video games and among a bunch of whole other things. And there are also there's also some extra content on the $5 and above tier, so you can go and check out some other spoiler casts, No Murderer, some background stuff that we did back in the ATG days, which is on there. But yeah, if you fancy it, go there, check it out, see what you think. There are some names, some of these awesome people on screen right now. I said scream almost then. On screen.
Whoa, it's not Halloween yet, Jonesy.
But I'd also like to give a shout out to I'm going to give a shout out to Aaron Cameron, Athletic Gravy, Brimstone, Ice Not Rock Salt, Jesper Camden Nielsen, Pastors Guild, Zander GTI, and the big dogs, the members of the board. It is Brett Z, aka Shellshock, Geometric Potter, Hacksaw Book Reed, Manuel Guerrero, and Peaswad. So thank you so much, guys, for supporting us. Like I said, you do really keep the lights on. You keep Jamie and I coming back week in, week out. So thank you very much.
Oh yeah, thank you all very much.
And then, what was I up to? Okay, next up, we had The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, Four Swords, Metroid Zero Mission, and Turok Dinosaur Hunter, as well as Perfect Dark, which are all coming to Nintendo Switch online today. So you can play some of those old school titles and get your kicks for some old school goodness. Was there any of those in particular that you thought you would like to play again?
I don't have a huge amount of nostalgia for any of them, I must be honest. I played some of the later Turoks, for example, and when it came to kind of like the Perfect Dark thing, I liked Perfect Dark, but I played it after the fact, and growing up I was we were a GoldenEye house, let me put it that way.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's cool that not only are these games coming back, but that a couple of them are coming back with online multiplayer as well. And I have never experienced multiplayer Perfect Dark, but I'm sure, if it takes as many cues as I imagine it does from GoldenEye's multiplayer, I'm sure that's an absolute laugh. And I don't know how well that translates to the online experience, but hopefully well enough that people are having a blast with it. Also, just you never know with these kind of things, like fortuitous timing for Perfect Dark to show up at this direct, or I'm sure that's there's no such thing as a coincidence when it comes to these kinds of things. But nice.
It's
cool
fun,
little thing.
It's funny, I used to love playing Turok back in the day. Like that first one came out, I thought was fantastic. It's not something I would want to go back to though. Like any of these, I see them and I'm like, oh yeah, they're cool. I used to play those. I never feel the desire to go back necessarily and play these types of games. Some old games I do, I do get a nostalgia hit. I would more likely go back and play Donkey Kong, like the earliest, or Space Invaders or something. I'll get more of a little kick out of playing those sorts of retro games than I would necessarily about this. I don't know why. I just have a weird thing about this.
I think I get that. I think. I'd be curious to know whether or not, what you think influences it more. I think sometimes it's aesthetics that are a part of it. In that, I think now that we've been through so many generations, some have just simply aged better than others. And when you're talking about a game like Turok, which launched on the Nintendo 64, we were in a weird time where polygonal graphics were kind of in their infancy, and as a result, you kind of got some games that were uglier than
draw distance. Draw distance in those games was about 10 feet in front of your character, which is weird. I've said about it many times before, and I'll say about it again. One of my favorite games, probably I'll have to say of all time, is G-Police, Black on the PlayStation, and the draw distance in that game was horrendous. And like you said, the graphics were terrible. And I wouldn't want to go back and revisit that, because that has a special place in my memory, and that doesn't need to be ruined by the
That's
reality
the other
of it.
thing. Yeah, who needs to be reminded of how, a dearly held childhood memory of theirs is actually, a bad video game all along. Like, you don't need that.
But
I think
that's
the other thing.
that's just slamming the fact that they're re-releasing all of these games. That's, if
Well,
you
like,
enjoy it, do it, go for it, enjoy.
and some people are going to play it for the first time, and some people are going to play
That's
it
so
like
true.
to fill in blanks in some kind of weird historical thing they're building up. Again, I don't know which blank Turok fills, but if that is something you feel like you need to play for a greater understanding of, like, I don't know where things were at in the late '90s, then maybe. I think the other, again, this also influences your decision on which games you'd like to go back to and which games you don't. But, like, certain genres went through certain iterations and certain evolutions over time, and I think the games that end up defining or meaning a lot to later entries in those genres end up standing out when you go back to them. And the ones that were still kind of like feeling their way through that genre and kind of like experimenting with things, maybe less so. And when you're talking about the first person shooter, I think it's one of the like classic examples of it. And like, there's a reason that people do still go back to Doom, and then they'll go back to Quake, and then they'll go back to GoldenEye, and so on and so forth. And there are going to be other examples through the early noughties and mid noughties and stuff like that. But then there are other like weird offshoots that maybe were cool in some respects, but because so many of the fundamentals of that genre hadn't been established or determined yet, they were like experimentations that just haven't aged as well. And like Turok is amongst them. And again, it's like when you go back, like, it's fascinating going back to even the PS2 generation and trying to play a bunch of different first-person shooters, and you go back and play like Call of Duty: The Finest Hour, and you go and play Medal of Honor Frontlines, and you go and play Black, and then you go and play Halo, and you're like, oh right, like aim down sights, like aim down sights hadn't really been established yet. You throw grenades with the left trigger in Halo, like all these weird things. Like, everything you think you know about first person shooters is rewritten because you hadn't had that Call of Duty watershed moment yet that made you look like a madman if you mapped reload to anything but square or X. Like if you map change weapon to anything other than Y and triangle. Like, so, and don't get me wrong, like Halo still went in its own direction, but every genre almost requires a trailblazer that wrangles in all these other games and says like, hey, like, for the sake of ease, here's how things work. Jump should probably be the bottommost button on a four-way. You know what I'm trying to say.
And yeah, on a Switch, it's not. It's not on a Switch. It's
right,
all the buttons are backwards.
Nintendo still say fuck it and like mix around. Like, yeah, so, but. Every genre has examples of games that you can go back to, and you can go, wow, this really was before we agreed on the way these things should probably work. And sometimes that alone can make a game feel old and kind of make for an somewhat unwelcome experience.
I think it's funny in the same way that we can all go back and look at and laugh at examples from cinema with terrible CGI, really bad compositing, and we sort of say now, we scoff nowadays and we say, why did they ever think that was acceptable? Why did they think that was like, did that look good? But then you have to realize that, in order to get to where we are today, we had to go through those stages. But now when we go back and look at it, we'll say that's awful. But at the time, we were kind of wowed about how good it was. And I think games is exactly the same. I think you're absolutely right. It's very easy to have hindsight when you look back, and you sort of, especially with the first-person shooters, to talk about all those things that you've said and to say how bad they are when, we simply didn't have the thing to compare them to. So.
You don't even have to go back that... Right, I loved Rainbow Six Vegas 2 so much. Me and my friend used to play Terrorist Hunt on Rainbow Six Vegas 2 all the time. Our favourite map was Villa. And you go back and you play that game and you're like, oh yeah, holding down the left trigger puts you into cover, which pulls back the camera to a third-person perspective. And because that meant that left trigger wasn't aim down sights had to be mapped to clicking in the right stick. And because you can't, it's unnatural to click and hold in the right stick, aiming down sights became a toggle rather than a hold. So you would click in the right stick to toggle ADS. And also don't accidentally press B or circle if you're going to try and crouch, because that's the throw grenade button. And then and when you're playing on realistic difficulty, a grenade accidentally thrown against a wall 2 feet in front of your face that then bounces back in your general direction is nasty. That's a recipe for disaster.
Well, I challenge anyone to go back and play GoldenEye on the N64 and hold the shoulder button to realise that brings up a targeting reticle, which is then moved around the screen with a joystick to aim as their version of aim down sights, and realise how nasty that is. I used to hold the controller in a really weird way, apparently, because I didn't hold the middle. I didn't hold it in the middle, which is what you're supposed to do. Because I like to hold it.
Oh, you didn't have a hand on the middle prong?
No.
So how did you did you reach your thumb over from the leftmost prong to to use the analog stick?
Yes.
Your poor hands.
So say my phone is the N64 controller, and the middle prong here. I would. Oh my! I'm going to do this way around, am I? So yeah, I would hold it like that, and then have my thumb all the way over here, but then use my trigger from this hand. So I would hold it like this: joystick here, trigger here, and it was And I used to get ridiculed for it often, but that's the only way I could do it. I couldn't do it with the middle thing. It was bizarre to me. So yeah, I still hold it like that to this day.
Weird.
Because then you also have to hold the little. Do you remember they had the extra D-pad with the yellow arrows?
Most games were designed so that you didn't need the D-pad. You would hold the middle prong, have immediate access to the analog stick. D-pad.
The little yellows.
That was where your right hand. That was where your right hand was.
But that had the strafe buttons on it. So my thumb would do those to strafe, and then my left thumb. Then I had to use that on the joystick. But I don't know why.
But the rest of your left hand, once your thumb had reached over for the analog stick, wasn't doing anything.
It was just doing the shoulder button on the top left-hand side. That was it.
But how often would you need that? Like in GoldenEye, the right shoulder button was the one that brought up the cursor.
I think both did.
Actually, you're probably right. Both did. Yeah. I don't know as well, because it's not just the analog stick. It was the fact that the shoot button, was it Z? I don't really know, was behind the analog stick. So you were reaching for both. That's
what I'm saying. I don't know. So that's what I'm saying. So my
fingered
my index finger on my right hand would reach across the back to pull the trigger, and my thumb of my left hand would do the joystick. And they were.
This is creepy. When I make a mental image in my head of your hand holding an N64 controller, it looks like a mangled AI image.
Do you know what? I'm going to get an N64 controller out, take a picture, and share it on Twitter, and I'm going to ask people, how did you hold yours? Like we used to do with how do you eat yours with the Cadbury's cream egg.
You're going to try and get a hashtag going?
I will. Anyone who wants to do reply to me and show me how you hold an N64 controller, feel free. I'll have to go to my loft and dig out my controller. And you're going to have to do the same. Oh, Jamie.
Oh, no, I don't live in the house that has all my N64 gear anymore, if it even still exists.
I just had a great idea, though.
What is it?
I'm going to bring a controller with me the next time I see you, which isn't too long, and I'm going to get you and Chris to show me how you hold yours.
Oh no! I need to go for a manicure before. I need to get my cuticles done before I let you snap any pictures of my fingies.
All right, I'll stop creeping everyone out with my weird way of holding an N64 controller. So let's move on. Next up, we had Phantom Brave, the Lost Hero, which sees Morona on a journey to save her best friend, Ash. It looks super cute, and it's coming to Switch in 2025. So a bit of a wait for that one. Then we had Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics, which sees 7 games coming in one collection. This was, what was it? Street Fighter... Marvel.
It was like Marvel versus Capcom, and there was X-Men in there. There was the Punisher in there.
Right. Yes. Yes.
But not a series of games or like a collection of games that, again, if you heard this before, that I have much nostalgia for. I'll be honest.
No, I think the X-Men one. If it's the one that I remember that I'm thinking about, then I do have a bit of nostalgia for that, but that's about it. Like,
okay.
Of all those others, I wasn't 100% on. Bring back Judge Dredd from that 90s SNES game. That's what I'm talking about.
I don't think we need that.
Star Wars from the same era.
Yeah, it's annoying. A lot of the descriptions for the game don't have all the included titles in it. It looks like it's X-Men Children of the Atom, Marvel Superheroes, X-Men versus Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter, Marvel versus Capcom, and then Marvel versus Capcom 2.
Okay.
Oh, and then obviously the Punisher with online co-op supported, which was the historic first game in the partnership between Capcom and Marvel, a side-scrolling beat 'em up.
I do see.
So
I think I remember that one.
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. Again,
Too many.
to perform before my time. I'm guessing it's before my time. I don't actually know that it is before my time. But when would you guess the Punisher game came out?
90, 98, 97, something like that.
93 in arcades.
Oh,
90,
wow.
94 on Genesis.
Okay, I'm out by 4 whole years. There we go.
I mean, it was an unfair question. It was,
I didn't play it. I didn't play it back
in the year in the 90s and hope for the best. No, I mean, yeah.
Then we had some info about Super Mario Party Jamboree, which is getting many new boards, tons of mini games, including one set in a mall and another on a race course, which is coming to Switch October 17th. So you can get your Jamboree on. Then we had something which I'm going to say this was the one that looked the most exciting out of any of the games. Am I going to say that? Maybe I'm going to say that.
I'm not going to say that.
I thought it looked really cute. This is Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom, which is a top-down, very stylized. I thought it looked a little bit like the Plucky Squire in sort of artistic design in some respects, which is not a bad thing. Maybe of the little, I don't know what you call them. The way that they've shaped the characters is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, it's also very similar to that Link's Awakening game from a couple of years ago. Right? It's like
the blur from like the tilt shift blur on it.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, that's it.
A very nice aesthetic, and this saw Link and a whole bunch of other characters falling into like a dark dimension, and then Zelda, Jamie, for once is given I can't remember what it was called. You've probably written it in for me, but I can't see. The Staff of Doodah is what I'm going to call it.
No, it was called like the Tri-Rod or something weird like that.
Yes. What was it?
It wasn't the Tri-Staff. I think it might be
I can't remember. It was. She was given a stick, a big stick, and Zelda is going to have the ability to create echoes of things she finds in the real world that she can then recreate ad nauseum to help her on her journey to rescue Hyrule. So what we saw in the trailer was that she was copying tables and boxes and even enemies to then summon echoes of to help her in her journey. I thought this looked adorable, fun, interesting. Actually had pangs of not Breath of the Wild, the other one.
Tears of the Kingdom.
Tears of the Kingdom, in the way that they were bringing the creativity out by giving you the ability to join those things together. It's almost like this seems to be a different branch on that same tree by allowing you to summon things that you find in the world. In that sense of like, because it's a weird kind of game mechanic in some sense, because you'd think that often in games you can't do certain things because you can't reach certain levels. But if they're giving you all these abilities to climb and do whatever you want all over the place, surely they have to account for that in the level design, which is interesting.
Surely they do. But then I think like Nintendo and the Zelda team in particular appear to be, in the industry at the moment, one of the masters of that. I mean, though there was always the story with Tears of the Kingdom, as you rightly brought up, with obviously one of the abilities, I forget the name of all the powers now, but one of the powers that Link has is basically to travel vertically upwards through any surface as long as there's a level above him that he can stand on. And the word around town was that was essentially a feature that existed in the debug version of the game that the developers had. The developers had access to allow them to more easily navigate about in the environment. And someone just said we should let the players do that. And yeah, you're right. It must be one of the most fascinating challenges in game design when you empower the players to do things that break or could theoretically break your world and your level design and the way you've structured your entire game, and having to go around and kind of like you talk about like looking through every nook and cranny and kind of going things with a fine-tooth comb. But when you have a large amount of things that a player can do to change the environment or to change or manipulate the environment or change the way they interact with the environment, it's a fascinating problem to solve, and these guys are the masters at solving it.
Yeah, for
Eiji Aonuma came out, and it might have been marketing talk, but he said that he hadn't been able to count the amount of things that you could create echoes of in the game, which bodes really well for, again, the variety of things that you can create and the variety of ways that there are to overcome challenges. And I just think it makes perfect sense I think in the long term that like I always hope that there is room for large scale open world 3D Zelda games like Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. But like if the Zelda trajectory and I guess by extension things like the Mario trajectory and so on and so forth have taught us anything in the past, is that they won't just keep making more of the same game. Eventually, they will try and find ways to shake up the formula and to offer new looks to a familiar franchise. And if this is an indication that one of the learnings or the ideas that they're going to take from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is the kind of the freedom and the borderline immersive sim approach of let's put control back in the hands of the players and give them a plethora of ways to overcome any obstacle in the game, even if we're going to make one of our, a top-down Link's Awakening style version of a Zelda game. I think it's cool that that's become one of the staples of that franchise. And I hope it's something that they stick with no matter where that series goes in the future. Yeah, because it's empowering and it creates, it just creates unique, original kind of like, oh shit, I didn't think that would work moments. And that's what has defined those last two Zelda games for me, is the moment when you go, I wonder if anyone else on the planet solved that way, or I wonder if that was even meant to work. And of course that it is meant to work because these guys are geniuses.
It gives me a certain level of anxiety playing the game, just knowing or thinking about how much they had to think about when they give you these levels of abilities. But they, like
especially
you said,
Tears of the Kingdom was Tears of the Kingdom was like the ultimate sandbox game in some respects.
Yes.
And when you're getting into the depths of like Ultra Hand and all that stuff, and you're creating these, you look at what some people have created now, where you've got like walking mechs and like ships that go on like bombing runs and things like that, and drones that like follow Link around and shoot lasers. I don't know that they had people on that team that like ever made stuff like that, let alone foretold that stuff would be made. But the fact that's where the community took things, even if you or I never could, and that those games don't fall apart at the seams when you do it.
Right.
I just think it's ingenious.
It is phenomenal. Yeah. Absolutely, and that's what always blows my mind, is how does the game not fall apart at the seams, as you just said, but it doesn't, and that is awesome. We got to see a bunch more artists and songs that are going to come to Just Dance 2025 edition later this year in October. We're talking Ariana Grande, Inur, Sia, and a bunch more artists, so if you want to get your dance on, you can do that. We then got to see a little sneaky peek at Lego Horizon Adventures, which we've already seen at Summer Game Fest, where Aloy is going to get Legofied. That is coming to Switch as well. And I'm kind of interesting one, because I don't know what platform. I thought like this is an obvious platform game to get on PlayStation, but then I'm like, but the Switch would probably be quite a charming little platform to play that on, because you could, as we said before, you can take it around with you, you can play it in different places. Reality, I'm probably going to get on the PlayStation, but I do like this coming to Switch as well. And I'll say again, like every time I see that game, it kind of makes me happy, because I think Horizon is a great game to bring to the world of Lego. There we go.
Yeah, I agree. I really hope that game is good.
We have also had a rough estimate as to when Stray will be playable on the Switch. If you ever wanted to play Stray slightly worse than you've already seen it and played it before, I'm being mean. If you've got a Switch and you want to play Stray, or more power to you, you'll be able to play it this holiday season. We've also this looked kind of cool and cute and adorable again. Tales of the Shire, a Lord of the Rings game. Lord of the Rings games haven't maybe fared that well on the podcast in the last few iterations, but this one looked fine. True. It's a little life sim set in the Lord of the Rings world. And it's coming to
cozy
Christmas as well. It did look cozy, and one of my kids went, "Yeah, this is Lord of the Rings. Where's Smaug?" And I said, "You don't need Smaug. You're in Hobbiton, and you're just having a lovely time."
Yeah, exactly. When everything isn't on fire and death is around every corner in the Lord of the Rings world, sometimes you just get to sit back and be a small man with hairy feet and make a cup of tea.
And do you know what? The fact that I'm that in real life doesn't matter. I want to do it in game as well. So
Hey,
it's all
you
good.
are of average height, my good sir.
Thank you very much. We've then got the what was it? Oh, next up we've got to reveal that 2 Ace Attorney games are coming to Nintendo Switch. They're coming in the Ace Attorney Investigations Collection. So if you ever wanted to be a badass investigator and figure out crimes, you can on Nintendo Switch on from September 6th. That'll be coming. And then this was weird. I don't know if you the 100-line Last Defense
Yeah,
Academy, which is coming early 2025. Yeah, bit of a strange one. This was like a couple walking down a street. Suddenly, the world is filled with weirdo enemies who look like
yeah.
I don't even know how to describe them. They're like these weird little round blob enemy things that attack you, but then you have to go to a school which is protected by magic to learn to fight, and you've got 100 days to defend your school, your class, and save the world from a very bizarre enemy. A very deadly enemy.
Yeah.
I had no idea what was going on in this one, to be fair.
I thought it was a weird trailer. I thought it was a weird look. The only thing that they can say about it in any which way is that it is from the makers of the Danganronpa series, as I understand it, and that is is a series that has been somewhat beyond me in terms of my understanding of its popularity, but it has remained popular and it has remained critically successful as well, both by Japanese outlet standards and Western standards as well. So, there's no reason why this can't be a smash hit. But for as long as it is just a trailer, I had the same sort of issues trying to interpret exactly what was going on, as it sounds like you maybe did.
Yeah, it was one of those.
I also just think it's a bad name.
Terrible. But then I think there's more of that, because I've always thought of the next game, Romancing Saga 2: Revenge of the Seven, is not a great name either. But
you're not wrong, especially because you hear Romancing Saga and you feel like you're set up for a game that's all about fucking, and then you learn that actually there's disappointingly little fucking to be found.
There is, because it's a turn-based battle game that's flashy and strategic, and it's coming out on October the 24th. So if you enjoy Romancing Saga 2 and you want to have another little chomp at that when it comes to Switch.
I've never played a Saga game, let alone romanced one. So
me either. Me either.
I'm not an expert, I'm afraid.
And that was all that happened. No, there was one more thing.
Very naughty.
Metroid Prime 4, which we first got announced through just a simple logo, if I remember rightly, back in 2017. We actually finally got to see some gameplay for this. It's coming out in 2025. Apparently, development had to be restarted in 2019, which is why it's taken so long for us to get a look at it and for it to be made and put out. Okay. Before I say anything about my thoughts about Metroid Prime 4, I want to hear your thoughts, because I don't want to sully you.
I think that it was really cool to see it back. It's glad to see not just a bit of a sign of life, but also that it had a solid trailer that, if we take everything at face value, I thought looked very nice and hit a lot of the kind of the notes that you would want a trailer for a Metroid Prime game to hit. I am not a die-hard Metroid Prime fan when it comes to the series historically, but I have liked them in the past, and to see its kind of unique take on we talk about the progression of FPSs. This is one of the series that has always very much done its own thing and never been remotely interested in playing by the rules. To see that still very much intact, and the kind of the strafing lock-on based shooting action still very much present and accounted for, the scanning, all the kind of the hallmarks of the Prime series still there, but with a new and quite sharp look, and the promise of numerous new worlds to kind of explore and get lost in, and I'm sure tonally and atmospherically it nails it the same way as its predecessors did. Then I'm sure this could be a very, very, very good game by most accounts. I think also the loose, non-specific 2025 date also sort of it makes it impossible not to imagine what this looks like with regards to the release of a potential successor to the Nintendo Switch. Is this the kind of the classic straddler? That kind of trademark Nintendo title that releases on both the old system and the new system simultaneously. And if that's the case, I'm sure we were shown the Nintendo Switch version of the game today, but is there an even shinier, better looking, or better performing version of the game out there? That could be a pretty enticing prospect. I'm just glad that Nintendo stuck with it and did what they needed to do. I mean, it's easy to dunk on Metroid Prime 4, and I have dunked on Metroid Prime 4 for being, one of those games like Silk Song and The Elder Scrolls 6 of like that classic, hey,
Yeah.
admit you announced this too early kind of thing. But I genuinely think this is a slightly different situation to certainly say something like The Elder Scrolls, where like Bethesda knew what they were doing. They announced The Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield at the exact same time. They announced the game we're making and the game after that. That was a very they were fully aware of what they were communicating at that point. In the case of Metroid, I can't remember who. I think it was at Bandai Namco. Prior to getting handed back over to Retro, who are kind of seeing it through to completion. If this was the case of the property being left kind of in the wrong hands, or it just wasn't the right fit, and the game wasn't coming together, and they looked at it and said, "Hey, like we need to make a big decision here. Take it away from Bandai Namco. Go and find a familiar studio or a studio who know their way around this franchise, and start from square one." That's a big decision. It's a costly decision. But if Metroid Prime 4 ends up being good, then it was ultimately the right decision. And I think in this era of kind of like, game cancellations and games that kind of like seem to drift off the radar under the shadow of night, for Nintendo to be very open and upfront, and they've given updates before. They've stood out in front of us at various times, and when Metroid Prime 4's development was fully restarted, they came out and said, "Hey, we've restarted development. It's changed developers. Don't expect to see this anytime soon." They've kept expectations somewhat in check. Yes, it's 7 years is an incredibly long time to go without even seeing a game. I get that, but I think they've just about done right by the process, considering how complicated it sounded like it was. And I hope that the end product is a reflection of how diligent Nintendo have been in the course of kind of getting the right game into the hands of Prime fans.
Yeah, no, and thank you for that well thought out and introspective assessment. But forget all that because it was trash.
Well, yeah, you don't like these games.
No, that's not true. I like Metroid Dread, which obviously is a very different game.
Yes, it is. You have never liked a Metroid Prime game. No, in fact, I'm going to go one step further. You've never played a Metroid Prime game.
I have not played a Metroid Prime game. You are absolutely correct. And I that's not to say I couldn't have liked a Metroid Prime game. I was genuinely shocked when a game that they announced 7 years ago, and to a lot of fanfare and positive fan reaction, and then we got to see the first bit of gameplay, and I thought, as we've already talked about old school first person shooters, and I thought, wow, this is one of them. But they're making it in 2024 and 5 and 2 and 3 and like. I think with the like you're saying, the lock on, there's the strafing lock on, like shooting the world. I know this is the Switch, so we're not talking about the most high end of graphical systems, but
sure.
I thought this looked nasty.
I think that's unfair. I don't know if I could get behind the word nasty. You could have maybe swapped that out for another adjective, and I might have.
Okay, this looks unimpressive.
I think sure you can feel that way. I think that's a totally valid way to feel, especially if like none of the other Prime games have ever done anything for you. Like that Prime remake that came out last year. Like if you saw that and you were like, nope, then yeah, of course, this isn't a franchise that's going to move the needle for you at all. I also think that like one of the things that this trailer in particular suffers from a little bit is it had not a very long amount of time to encapsulate a lot of different stuff. It had to immediately re-establish, like, hey, yes, you are looking at a Metroid Prime game. This isn't a Metroid offshoot or a 2D entry. You had to show off some combat. You had to show off some scanning. But like when you play Metroid Prime games, and again, when I talk about tone, when I talk about atmosphere, when I talk about exploration, like there's a lot more going on in Metroid Prime games than reaching a small room with three dudes and strafing around, locking on and blasting them until they're all dead. There's a lot more going on in them than that. That's all I'll say.
Okay, well, I'll hold out some hope then, but I will clarify the Metroid Prime that came out last year was remastered, wasn't a remake. So just to clarify. But then
I would advise you or anyone to look at a side by side of Metroid Prime and Metroid Prime 2023 and ask whether or not you think it's a remaster or remake. I think Nintendo actually did themselves a disservice by choosing to describe it a remaster. Those assets were I don't want to get into the semantics and argue the difference between a remaster and a remake, but in my mind, again, I'd recommend anyone look at a side by side. I think it's unfair to call it a remaster, even though Nintendo chose to do that.
But I also think
there you go. That's technically wrong.
That's fair. Like there's a lot of things that cross the that sort of blur the boundaries between remaster and remake, and sometimes maybe for safety's sake they use the term remaster when actually most assets have been remade, but then for legal purposes, whatever, it's possible.
I don't know. I say safety is all I can think of. I don't know why they chose to call it a remaster. Like genuinely, I even look at a side by side of like the opening sections and like asset for asset. Like it looked to me to be completely redone, but there you go. They call it a remaster. The name of the game is Metroid Prime Remastered. So.
It is indeed. But the name of the game for us, Jamie, is the end of the show.
Yeah. Oh, one thing we forgot to actually say. We kept talking about Metroid Prime 4 and referring to it as Metroid Prime 4. We also learned today that it's officially called Metroid Prime 4 Beyond.
It is.
And I think that is incredibly stupid. I don't like that name. I know.
Is it colon beyond, or is it just beyond? Is it Metroid Prime colon?
It's colon beyond. And like for what it's worth, all the previous Metroid Prime games followed the same pattern in terms of number colon subtitle, and they've always been one-word subtitles. So it's consistent. I just don't know about the word beyond. I think I associate it too closely with Star Trek.
Oh right, okay, fair enough. I don't think. I don't really have any. I don't. Beyond seems alright to me, but then, like I said, I don't know the series particularly well, so
well enough to say it looked nasty.
That was more general. That was just a general reaction to seeing a video game that didn't look good.
I probably believe if you took Samus out of that trailer and told me that I was looking at a brand new first-person shooter game that was kickstarting a new series, I probably wouldn't have had that many nice things to say about it either. But I think I'm giving it a bit more rope than I might have otherwise because, I know that Metroid Prime games don't trailer well.
That's fair, but I'll tell you one weird thing, because one of the weird things, just to finish off on, one weird thing I had was like, so when the ship came in at the very opening of the trailer, I was like, oh damn, it's Metroid Prime. I was like, this is, okay, wicked. Then Samus gets out of the ship and I was like, okay, yeah, this is looking really cool. Then she like rolls through the vents, gets into the place, and I'm like, okay, everything's banging. And then and then you get the first person, because the first person view, and you see the gun and everything, and she scans something and then starts aiming at enemies. That is when I was just like, what is this? This does not look good. But I take you are more informed than I am. I'll take it with a pinch of salt, that trailer, because like you said, Metroid Prime games don't trailer.
Informed, uninformed. You're just saying what you see at the end of the day.
I am indeed.
There are a lot of people. There hasn't been a Metroid Prime game since 2007. They've got a lot of people to win over. There are going to be people who weren't born the last time a Metroid Prime game came out that they're going to try and sell this Metroid Prime game to. So their marketing's important, their trailers are important, first impressions are important, and they didn't make a good one on you. So it's still an important discussion point.
That is very important because I'm very important. And anyway,
I agree.
Jamie, you're very important. And all of our people who watch us are very important as well. So thank you so much for watching the Super Show podcast. All the people that watch us live in YouTube or listening to this later on audio platforms, thank you so much. And Jamie, thank you for being here and giving us your expert opinion and guidance, as always.
Pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
We will be back next week, similar time, similar day. I'm not going to say the same because sometimes it changes.
You never know. Things happen during the week and things move around.
But hopefully there's a little bit more news outside of a direct or something like that because, we're quite lucky that Nintendo had something going on because otherwise it would have been slim pickings.
Oh, God, we've been spoiled. And now next week it's going to be like, okay, we've got another news story here about a studio closure. And then we've got another story here about a creative director who's had one quote taken out of context and twisted and mangled so that it could technically be referring to this other series. And
we were spoiled with all the Summer Game Fest and Xbox Showcase and PlayStation State of Play and Ubisoft.
Yeah, we have what they refer to in the industry as post-Keeley depression symptoms.
We do. We really do. We really do. Thank you, and we will. We'll see you again real soon. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.